So Sundays are for Scorecard, and it's been a good weekend as far as sports is concerned. A good shout out to all of you out there who make time to watch us over the weekend. Our text and WhatsApp numbers will be on your screen as always. Text us, let us know exactly where on the continent you are watching us from. As far as this weekend is concerned, Real Madrid and Barcelona just wrapped up the Spanish Super Cup. That's just in the bag. There was FA Cup action this weekend in England. The biggest talking point, obviously, Antoine Semenyo debut for Manchester City after that historic move, and then went on to record a goal and an assist and took away the player of the match as well. So what a way to introduce yourself to the faithful. When you come down to the continent, the AFCON is raging. It's the big boys now. The semi-final stage is set. I'll be telling you all about that. But before, we'll be going through all the highlights of the quarter-final games, controversy, backstories, patterns, lots to talk about as far as the AFCON is concerned. We'll do a little detour, talk about some Bundesliga and Serie A as well. So, loaded show. Let me do a quick turnaround. When we come back, I'll introduce my guys in the studio and we'll get going. Welcome back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. My two good friends are in the studio. Manuel Kwache of Citi Sports. Eugene Soti. Eugene, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First time on Scorecard?
Yeah.
It's good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Nice. Let's get right into it. Like I said, for those of you out there watching us, send us your thoughts. I want to know where you're watching us from and what your opinions are this weekend. Let's start off with the African Cup of Nations. That's where we are going to get into because the tournament is heating up. You look at Morocco, they have come under some fire for not filling the stadia. That has been a thing throughout the earlier stages, not so much anymore because in the final stages, they've managed to get in there, get a good share, and also uplift the spirits of the competition. So let's start off with what was a big game, controversial game as well when it ended. Algeria, Nigeria, quarterfinals. Let's get into the highlights. They are having an almost flawless tournament so far, even though they've had a few banana peels in the back rooms, in the background, but did away with Algeria. The Algerians, though, were not too happy about being dumped out. A lot of skirmishes in the aftermath. Talk to me about that. What is that grounded in? Because I looked at this game. This game could easily have ended 6-0 or 5-0. I'm not sure why they feel aggrieved. I'm not sure why that nasty fallout.
If the way I would understand it, the way Algeria have been in this tournament, I think they've been promising. I think they and Nigeria were the only teams that came in with a 100% record. They had won all their games up to this point. So, but with Algeria, how much they've invested into their football, I think makes it a problem. We mentioned on the Republic of Football that their coach, Vladimir Petkovic, he's the highest paid coach at the AFCON. I think almost double what any other coach is earning at the AFCON. And this is a team that's coming back off two disappointing AFCON performances after winning the tournament. So I think once he got into it and he got to where the quarterfinals against Nigeria, there was hope that maybe this was one of the tournaments where maybe they could go further and go all the way. So I can understand why in the moment after they've been eliminated, there's been a lot of frustration. Journalists
getting into it, getting upset about it. I'm sure you saw it. How do you process all of that?
It's just politics. You know, the Algerians and the Moroccans, even though they are neighbors, they don't see eye to eye years. And I don't know if you remember, there was one CHAN tournament where the Algerians wanted to fly directly into the Moroccan Morocco, and it wasn't allowed. So it's something of it's ego and pride, and I think I'm not happy saying this, but I think it's something with our North African brothers. They are sore losers. They don't take losses lightly, and I think it's just a problem with them, and it's not even just their behavior. Now, just after the game, check Vladimir Petkovic's social media handles.
Okay.
He posted something. He posted a referee, posted money, and you know what? And CAF posted a flyer. He posted the cash signal and as a comment under. Then what even killed me was he did a poll. And he says, which team is supposed to win the AFCON? Then he writes Nigeria, Senegal, Egypt, and then Morocco. And then the last one, he puts the referee there.
That's very interesting.
He's just a sore loser. And honestly, I'm very much surprised because the attitude of the players and the comments of the players after the game, they are on divergent lines. Mahrez and the other players who were in the mix zone were honest enough to say they were beaten good. And then I see the attitude of the players, and I'm thinking, if you were beaten very good, and this is one of the games where I cannot blame the referee for anything as well. So then I don't know.
The journalists were actually involved in it. I saw videos where journalists seemed upset. It kind of took me back to Ghana's own exit from the last AFCON, where players were upset because journalists were upset because players wouldn't come and speak to them after the game. But this was not even the same type of situation. These guys were available. So
the Algerians were upset because heading into the game, Moroccans were supporting the Nigerians. So it looked like it was the rest of the world against the Algerians. And so I think that's where, and as well, because of what Amor had done to the Congolese as well, they had cut out so many enemies. It looked like the whole of Africa
I can
against
understand
the Algerians. So I think that was the problem. And I think they need to sort it out, because it has marred the beauty of the football the Algerians have played throughout the tournament. Remember that the Ghanaian team and the Algerian team, we have been on the same trajectory over the last few years, where we've exited from the last two AFCONs at the group stage. And the only thing was that we went to the World Cup. They didn't go to the World Cup. And they were serious enough to get a competent coach. And we went to, as usual, we're playing, and we did what we wanted. And I think they did very well. The rebuilding has taken shape. And now in the Algerian team, there's the experienced players and there are the youthful players. And I think they've done so well that players like Ibrahim Maza, who were just introduced into the team just before the AFCON or just within the year, have integrated into the team so well. So I think this thing has just
taken the shine off the work they've done.
The beautiful work they did.
I didn't understand.
I feel like it's to be expected. Just going back to investment, I think it's just a deflection. Because if they want to focus, the way their coach is focusing on the referee and money and all that sort of issue, I think it's just a way to deflect from their own performance when they came up against a good team. And they would have probably expected something, given all the turmoil that's in the Nigeria camp. Coming to play against this Nigerian team, I think they would have expected to be able to at least rattle them or get a bit more from the game. But we watched the game, and even in the first half, even though Nigeria didn't take any of their chances, they should have been 2-3-0 up. Adam should have had at least a hat-trick. He missed some really clear-cut chances.
Big sitters.
So I can understand the frustration from the Algerians, but just to focus on Nigeria a bit, it was sort of to be expected. They've come into this tournament and I think they've been the best team of the tournament so far. If you can take away all the off-field issues, they're still the only team with a 100% record to have won every game at this point. So I think that when Eric Shaw has got them playing really good football, and this tournament could clearly be one for them. If we're losing out in the final last year, this should be their tournament.
Stay with Nigeria a bit for me before I move it on. Now, they look like they can go all the way and win it, like you said, looking like the best team at the tournament. How would you reflect on how they've processed the off-the-field issues? So first, the bonus row, and then secondly, the little skirmish between Victor and Lukman.
I don't mean to sound unfair, but Nigeria is not shy of controversy, at least when it comes to the Super Eagles. All I can maybe I can analyze and say that, given that they've been through this before, maybe if it was a different country where they had never experienced these problems and players were speaking out for the first time and then getting a reception that was unique to them, maybe that would be different. But I think with Nigeria, these distractions have always come. They always seem to come, whether or not they should come, if different processes were done differently, if the FA was able to manage the footballing parts of the country well, maybe these things would happen less. But then also even throughout Africa, I think sometimes you notice a pattern of these things, and I think the Nigerians have just gotten a bit where they're just a bit adjusted to it, and they were able to ignore all the other field issues. Obviously, I want to give a little credit to Wilfred Ndidi. He took up the mantle when Wilfred Chosekong left the national team, and this has been one of the most difficult tournaments, even by Nigerian standards. So he's been out, he's been fronting to the media, he's been speaking publicly about everything, and I think that helps. I also want to credit the coach a bit, Eric Shaw. We've spoken about the impact that he's had, especially when you look back at their World Cup qualifying campaign, and he had so many different managers, but when he came in, at least some way, somehow, he's been able to settle them down and get them playing really good football. The only loss was in an international friendly against Qatar before they came into this tournament. So I think that he's got them playing football, whereas now, like you are saying, they should be looking at the tournament thinking this is the one we should win.
Well, thinking about the tournament and thinking they should win, but I've also noticed a few interesting things. So Calvin Bassey, for instance, has really interested me in this tournament. Not a player I fancy really, but looks like he's really like enjoying himself in the competition. Somebody says he plays like a positionless defender. He's literally all over the place. So good tournament from him so far. They were a little shaky in the group phase, but I think they've patched it together. Nigeria doing their thing. Alex Iwobi's coming for praise as well.
Yeah.
Looked like he's had a great tournament.
He's looking really good in midfield. Since I think when he started out at Arsenal, he was being used as a forward. And I don't know how well that was.
He's moved all over the place. Forward, winger, that all.
Yeah, so a bit like Joe Linton at Newcastle. I think once they found a role in midfield that they're able to settle in, rather than having to move up and down the field all the time, they found a position that they can settle and control the game for. And that's helpful. Also, just to give credit to Osimhen. Because if a lot of the players, I don't know how the collection was able to deal with the matter internally, but he came out and he played really well. And we mentioned on the last chance that he was even looking a little more unselfish. He was looking to bring others into play, and this could have gone an entirely different way. So I'm just a credit to the people who were involved in how they handled the whole situation to get the focus back on the football.
Well, focus back on the football. Nigeria have a tough task. I believe they're up against host nation Morocco in the semis. We'll talk about that after we are done dealing with the quarterfinal action. Let's get into the next quarterfinal game, which happened between Egypt and Côte d'Ivoire. Now, heading into this game, Côte d'Ivoire struggled against Egypt somewhat. I think had lost or hadn't won in the last 5 games against the Pharaohs, so it was always an uphill task for them. In the end, Mohamed Salah, he also has his own storyline written into this competition. He has his own agenda as far as this competition is concerned. He led his team to victory against the Elephants. Let's get the highlights. Back. So Egypt, in the end, having too much for Côte d'Ivoire. Egypt, let me take your thoughts on this one first. Now, big game, 5 goals. Not the best type of game if you are defensive-minded. Very interesting errors there, but deserved win for Egypt for you?
No.
How so?
I think that they profited from surprising the Ivorians. So, and I think it's because of 2 things: the predictability of the Ivorian team and then the individual errors we saw on the day. So usually with the Ivorian team, every Ivorian fan knows that on top of his head, 8 players are starters. So Yaya Fofana, the goalkeeper, Gislan Konan, the left back, Evan Ndika, and then Odilon Kosunu are the centre backs. Then the right back is where the problem is, because either with for Singo, who is out injured, Umar Diakite, or now Gela Doué we saw there. And then in the midfield, the 3 men are either Kesse Sangare and then Sekofa. Now he's been replaced by Inao. And then at right wing is Ahmad Diallo. Then the problem is whether Ale plays or not, whether there's Adingra or whether there's Diomande. So I think what the Egyptians did was they tried to mark out the key players for the Ivorians, and there were 3 players: Gislan Konan, the left back, Frank Kessie in midfield, and Ahmad Diallo at the right wing back. And I say individual mistakes because the first goal, it was Frank Kessie. Kessie is the like the conductor in the orchestra.
I think we can roll the highlights as he goes, and so then we can just get a sense of the game.
Kessie loses the ball within the 3rd minute, and just after he loses the ball, if you realize that the last AFCON, there were certain games where Ivory Coast shouldn't have won those games, especially DR Congo, but Halle was the difference. And this game was one where clearly Ivory Coast lacked a standing number 9. And Ivory Coast have tried 3 number 9s in this tournament, and they are still not sure which one is the perfect replacement. So in the first game, started with Wilfred Zaha. In the second game against Cameroon, Bayo, but I think Bayo plays with Watford. Bayo started that game, and then he made a lot of mistakes. He had sitters of headers, just an empty pole to head it. He missed. And then finally, they brought in Evan Gessan. Gessan is struggling from a lack of confidence because he moved from OGC Nice to Aston Villa, and he's struggling for game time, and his confidence is out of the place.
I think he was even drafted in late as a replacement for Sebastian Halle.
And he seemed to have struggled a lot of the time, though. He really didn't get into the game. I think one of the problems again for MS Faye, and by the way, he has now lost his first AFCON game. In his 9th match, he has now lost his first AFCON game. I think one of the problems he had was that at the last AFCON, one thing that worked for him was that his in-game reading. He knew when and where to take off a player and bring him. Remember against Mali, he knew when to bring Adingra, and Adingra got him the goals. He took off certain players at moments I think he should have done maybe earlier. He took off Kessie at the right time, but Gessan had no business on the pitch in the second half. He should have been off earlier. And I think, in my humble view, that Umar Diakite should have replaced Geladue very early in the game. Why? Because Geladue's crosses were towards the waist of the Egyptian defenders, and you know they have height. Now, MS Faye have brought in 2 strikers. He left Gessan on the pitch for a while, and he brought in Bayo. And I think later he took off Gessan and brought in Jean-Philippe Crasso. He had 2 strikers, so it meant that he was waiting for crosses into the box. But Geladue's crosses weren't going as high. But Diakite showed us at the last AFCON that he had the ability to do that, and he had done it multiple times. And I think that's one of the issues that they need to look at. But I think there are a lot of positives the Ivorians can take from this game. And one is the fact that they have a lot of young players who, in the next 10 years, Ivory Coast can rely on. And for me, the revelation of the tournament is now Chris Ulai. He plays for Trabzonspor. He was drafted into the team just in the November window when the other countries were taking in the playoff, World Cup playoffs, and Ivory Coast were in a friendly against Saudi Arabia. He came on, and then so far I think he has brought a dynamic in that midfield because of his diminutive nature. He's able to enter into tight spaces. He's able to dribble. He's able to latch onto the ball, and he adds a bit of dynamic Seko Fofana doesn't give them. And I think that's something they need to look at. But I think in the long term, Ivory Coast needs to look at 2 things: the centre-back pairing. Kosono and Indika are good players. Indika with Roma, Kosono with Atalanta, both consistent players in the Serie A. But the problem is, when you combine both players in, and again, they struggle in counter-attacking situations. So many matches, clearly, Mamouche's goal and what Salah did in the... In fact, all 3 goals were based on counter-attacking situations. And
what happened to Diomande? I think they have the...
So this is the problem with the Ivorians, I've realized. Their centre-backs all their centre-backs play for very big teams. So Willy Bolly is with Nottingham Forest. Diomande plays with Sporting Lisbon. But guess what? When they played against Gabon, which was in the last game, Diomande and Agbadu plays for Wolves. They had a howler of a day. Both players couldn't just combine. And I think what they need to figure out is who should, among those 6 centre-backs, which of the 2 are good enough. I think Indika is good. Kosono is the problem in counter-attacking situations. So maybe they should figure out a way of playing Agbadu and Indika, and I think that is where they can sort those things out. But I think the Ivorians give a good account of themselves. As for the Egyptians, they are just like Madrid in the Champions League. They don't need to be at the absolute best, but they pick and choose moments to arrive in. Hossam Hassan said it, that they have 3.5 players. He even says 3.25. Mamouche, Salah, Trezeguet and Mustafa Mohamed. The rest of them are just adding to the team. And I think that the Egyptians will do very well at the AFCON, but the World Cup is where they will be exposed. So I think that, well, kudos to them. They've made it to the last 4, and we'll see how that goes.
We'll touch on that. Talk to me about Egypt. I want you to take that Egypt bit. Like Eugene said, not been dominant in this competition, but they look pretty clinical. When they get their chances, they put them away. Salah's been leading the charge. He's been doing his bit. What do you think they can improve? They got by Côte d'Ivoire, but this was a close shave. Easily could have been a different result. How can they improve this tournament or in this competition going to that next game?
Well, in terms of this tournament, I think what they need to do is just control more games. Against Côte d'Ivoire, even though they had taken the lead, when they went 2-0 up and then they went 3-1 up, it never really felt like the game was over. And that's something that I think that they need to work on. Looking at how their tournament has progressed so far, the only game they didn't win was Angola, where they managed to change all their squad. So I think it's also similar with the way Algeria too were managing Mahrez. And Salah and obviously Mamouche is much younger. Even he was given a rest in that game. And I think with Egypt so far, it looks like they're still playing within themselves a bit. It looks like they can, if you ask me, I think they're still playing within themselves a bit. And there's maybe a gear or 2. Yeah, I think there's a gear or 2 that they can do. In the next game, though, that's going to be a tough challenge. That's what I need to see. Obviously, Côte d'Ivoire are good. They were defending champions. But I don't think in this tournament, they've been one of the clear-out best teams. But going into the next game against Senegal have been statistically impressive with how they play. When you look at them play too, I think that with Mane also in his also, both him and Salah in this stage of their career where they are no longer the young, if you know what I mean.
No, I didn't think about that storyline. There's Mane and Salah to look, and it's always been there, since Mane left Bayern, Saudi Arabia, it's still always been there.
I mean, and Mane was speaking this year to, I think, to Rio Ferdinand, and he
said a lot of
yeah,
things.
There's a lot. He can say a lot more now because he's not in the same country as him. Yeah, but I think going into this game with both of them being in their, I don't say legend, but I think they are the ones who are now the big. I'm looking for a word, but I think icons or leaders.
Yeah.
They are the big leaders in the team now. Obviously, Mane has already won one, and this was also another thing. The last time these two teams met was in that final, and Mane won on penalties. If Egypt are able to win this, they can get through to another final, and hopefully this is the one that they can make it right. So for Egypt, in terms of, they'll just be putting all demons to bed. If they can go through Senegal, I think they'll go into that final feeling like they can definitely win this tournament.
Egypt, Senegal, that should be a cracker. The semi-final pairings are just great. Like I said, we'll touch on those before we move away from the AFCON. We have 2 more AFCON highlights for you, going a little deeper into the quarterfinals. So we'll take that. But let's do a quick turnaround here on the show, take our first break. When we come back, we'll get into more AFCON talk and more breakdowns as far as those quarterfinal games are concerned. Welcome back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. Let's get in more quarterfinal action. This time, that regional rivalry between Mali and Senegal. Tom Saintfiet had been talking tough before the game, talking about how he had faced more difficult opponents than Senegal. In the end, Senegal were not dominant again, but managed to get the job done, which is what's important. So they are off to the next round, but let's cut the highlights of that game. Yes, so 1-0 is how it ended. We call it a smash and grab, but in the end, it was enough to get them over the line. Let me start to you on that note. So Senegal doing just enough to go over the line against Mali. Mali, on the other hand, again, perpetually disappointing. Always promise so much, deliver very little as usual. Can they really shake out of this and become like that team that will fulfill their potential eventually?
Eventually, I mean, it depends on if the coach is able to change the style. Well, speaking of air and how do you call it? We came to notice that Saintfiet, he has a particular style he uses for tournament football, and according to what we're talking about. So, when he came into this tournament with Mali, if you remember when he played against Ghana, he was being very complimentary about. I mean, he wasn't being very complimentary, but he was given the implication, the idea that he could come and take Ghana and make Ghana slightly better. I don't know how well that.
And he will make Ghana slightly better. Let's put it on record.
Yeah. He will.
Especially based on what we are experiencing now. You can look innocent.
I don't think it's debatable.
No, I mean,
his posture is very diplomatic, and I don't think it's debatable.
I mean, the only way he's making it better is because we're already coming from a base level that is not as high as it could be. But I think that in terms of looking for a coach, I think we should be aiming for someone a little more tactically fluid. But that's a different discussion.
Fair, which is fair.
Which the point about that was about how in the tournament, I think he's only had 2 proper game plans. He's either been a team where they get a goal, and I think that only happened in one game. That was probably the second game that he played.
Morocco.
The game against Morocco.
Yeah.
That's when they came back into the game. The last game against Cameroon, they drew 0-0, and they haven't looked like they were either going to score or concede, which is impressive because they are not good going forward, but they've been one of the more difficult teams to play. And then all of these games, they found themselves in positions where they needed to at least come back. They did it last game against Tunisia. They had to come from a goal behind. And the first game against Zambia, they had to come back from a goal behind. You can't constantly keep doing that. You can't win or go deeper in a tournament if that is how you intend to play your football. They also had in the last game against Tunisia, they lost Paraguay a red card in the 26th minute. Yeah. In this game, Bissouma gets sent off on the stroke of half-time. How do you also intend to continue competing if all the time you keep losing players or your discipline issues means that every time you have to play 10 against 11, as well as you train on the training pitch to deal with those situations. Yeah. Once it gets to the big moment, you need to be able to calm your players down so that in the moment they are able to at least keep their head on and see out the game. Having to come back into this game, which it was just one goal, and their goal was the only thing that separated them. I think they could have been able to come back into the game. They had a few chances, but having to play with 10 men, and on the fact that on the back of this tournament, they're still the only team that hasn't actually won a game in this tournament.
Yeah, so they deserve to go home. That's why they should go home. Can't be doing this in a tournament. Limping, trying to find loopholes to slip through. Come on, man.
Yeah, I don't think
Go
at least in this tournament, I don't think
Go.
they've given the best account to themselves. So I can understand why Senegal were able to go through.
You talk to me about, I don't know if you want to touch on Mali, but you can touch on Senegal too for me. For a good part, touted as favorites, I wouldn't necessarily say they've played like favorites, but they've just hung around enough to get to where they need to be. How impressed have you been by them? What have you liked? What haven't you liked?
So first off, before I touch on Senegal, with the Malian team, I think Tom Safa posted something on IG where he says, you go back in time and check some of the teams that ended up winning competitions. They actually never won. And he cited Portugal Euro 2016. They didn't win any group stage.
He's shameless.
So, and I think his thinking is that tournament football is quite different from normal friendly games and other competitive matches. And so he didn't fancy playing so well, but what he fancied was progressing to the next stage. And I think maybe his tactics on the day is what didn't help him, because I think against Morocco, what helped him was he went with a 3-5-2 formation, and that stifled the Moroccan midfield, and they were not able to create, and Azedine Houtnaï and the other players couldn't have a field day. And then heading into the game against Senegal, because of red cards of a few players, his choices were stifled, and then his team was highly disciplined. Bissouma's red card was a third in 3 consecutive games, and so I think it made it. What that created was that he didn't have a fluid formation he could work around with. So he had to go with a 4-3-3, and I think that's what led them to being exposed. But heading to the Senegalese team, I think they've impressed me. And I just think that they are now facing undue pressure, because I think all of a sudden people are now realizing they are a team of superstars, and so then they need to prove their worth. And I think even among the superstars, I think the Senegalese and the Nigerians are the only teams who have proved beyond reasonable doubt that they're favorites. Because I think the Moroccans and the other teams, the Egyptians, are just joking. They are riding on...
Morocco have been... I think Morocco have been on the up. Started really poorly. Last game was a little controversial, but...
Even the Tanzania game, Tanzania actually respected them, because... And I guess what? There was an open... There was a player who had a gaping chance. Bono was out of the post.
Game could have gone very differently.
It could have gone very different. And to be honest, I have never been impressed by the Moroccans, because I think there was a lot of hype about them. And then after watching them a few times, I think, for me, I think the Senegalese and Nigerians are the only ones
that makes sense if you say that they haven't matched the hype, because I thought they were the most loaded team coming into the competition. Maybe Nigeria would have something to say about that. Maybe could be, I don't know.
But the Senegalese are actually loaded.
Senegalese have a really good team as well.
And I think that they've done really well. I think the marked difference between Pape Thiaw and Aliou Cissé is that I think Pape Thiaw used to go, Aliou Cissé used to go to a 4-2-3-1, and I think Pape Thiaw has gone strictly with a 4-3-3, and I think that has changed the dynamics of the midfield a little, because now it turns out that players like Pape Matar who week in, week out play for Tottenham Hotspur and in Aliou Cissé's team where regular players are now on the bench. But I think that generally the Senegalese have been decent, and I think that the only surprising thing for me is that a player like Iliman Ndiaye isn't hitting it. 2 players have surprised me at this AFCON. One is Mohamed Amoura of Algeria, because in the World Cup qualifiers, the guy scored 10 goals. We went into this AFCON, not even a single goal. Then Iliman Ndiaye as well, playing very well for the national team. But until at this tournament, he hasn't really hit it. Jackson Ryder has a few goals. And Ndiaye rather is the one struggling. And finally, he got his first goal. I think generally this is not a game where the Senegalese were very much expressive, because I think that even though the Malians were not having the full complement of the team, they still managed to do the most important thing. Game. And I think maybe kudos to their goalkeeper, the Malian goalkeeper, Djigui Diarra, because Djigui Diarra made at least 5 crucial saves.
I think we should roll the highlights on this as he speaks, so we can just catch like some context with some of the scenarios. Yes, you're making.
So Senegal, the result, the Nigerians have a bit of squad depth, but I think the
Senegalese have good squad depth,
because Ismail Jacobs was their starting left back. Now the West Ham guy, El Hadji Diouf, has now replaced him. In centre back, they've got very, very good guys. Abdoulaye Seck, who is good enough to deputize for all of them. And the team is so good now. Now Kripin Diatta is no longer a midfielder. He's now playing at right back. That tells you a lot about
it's been a good tournament relatively for them. Let's do one more highlight and then we'll touch briefly on the semi-final pairings before we move it on. So let's get to the final one, which is Morocco. They were up in that game doing their thing, won that game by 2-0, basically stifled their opponents, got the result, but not without some controversy against the indomitable Lions of Cameroon. Let's get the highlights of that one. Brahim Diaz having himself quite the tournament, and Saibari as well. I don't know what that celebration meant, but he had quite the game in that encounter. Let me read a few messages and then I'll take brief thoughts from my guys on that game. So this one here is from Chris from Ofankor Barra. He says, I hope Salah wins this year's AFCON. So Slot sees that he is the problem and not Salah. This one here is from Isaac, a.k.a. Asasia Bai. Says he's watching from Takrade. He says, I always watch you guys. Keep it up. Good evening, Ben and Pandit. It is wrong for Ghanaians to watch the African Cup of Nations live or repeated on TV. You're asking if it is wrong or is it wrong? I'm not sure which one you're asking. This one here is from Edia TV, our good guy from Lome in Togo. Says, I salute you guys from all the way out here. We are witnessing the AFCON in Morocco. It's unfortunate that the Black Stars are absent. And if we don't organize the team properly, it looks like the Black Stars will have a complicated World Cup campaign. There's that. This one here is from Kobe from Kumasi. Says, shout outs to Eugene. He was my guy back at the University of Ghana in Ikwafo Hall. Nice one.
But Kobe, I'm not sure what shouts to him. Thank you.
I'm sure you know a couple of Kobe's, that's the problem.
But
the Man United fans deserve whatever they are going through. They clearly don't know what their problems are. Amorim was the least of their problems. This guy. Sir Aristo from Seshibekwa says that Côte d'Ivoire just gave it to the Egyptians. Better still, Nigeria and Senegal can make us proud. So we have 2 West African nations, 2 North African nations, so perfectly balanced, perfectly poised. West Africa have been dominating the AFCON for a minute, so I'm sure Morocco and Egypt want to have something to say about that. This one's from Gordon from Nungwa, says, good evening to you guys. Wonderful insights and analysis from your pundits. Kudos to my man, Soti. Okay. The Super Eagles are on their way to winning the next AFCON. They will be in the final, although they will be in the final match against any of the other 3 contenders. I'm not sure how this was worded, but I get what you're trying to say. Let's talk about that game real quick. Morocco won that game against Cameroon, again, not without controversy. Penalty shouts, people saying that match trajectory or momentum could have changed if some decisions had gone certain ways. How do you feel about that?
I don't think so. I think Morocco comprehensively won that game. We spoke about how they came into this tournament on a winning run. On I think 17 games before they came, they made it 19. It was 18 games before they came to the tournament, and they made it 19. And after they drew at Mali, it looks like they started their own winning run again. They look like they're a team full of confidence. They were able to create some chances in the game, and Brahim Diaz became the first player in AFCON history to score in 5 consecutive games. He himself has been, I'd say he's been one of the better players. Since he joined the Moroccan national team, I think he's had an impact there. And his impact has almost coincided with the timing which Hakim Ziyech has also lost his impact, like his influence on that team.
Very interesting mention.
He had to go there.
Yeah.
I know, but
I think it's an interesting mention because as at when Ziyech left Ajax and appeared on the Chelsea radar, there was a lot of hype, and he was expected to be big. He's not been anywhere as big as he was expected to be. So, interesting mention.
But at least in terms of the national team.
Where's he now? Where's Hakim Ziyech?
He's
He's
a
a
Wydad
Casablanca.
Casablanca. I think he joined them a few months before there.
Went to
Galatasaray,
I think.
Yeah,
he
he went to
ended up in
Galatasaray.
Qatar,
I think Zaha, when Zaha was at Galatasaray at that time. So,
Interesting.
He had an issue, so he had to leave the club.
He's moved around a lot in the last 2 or 2 years. Interesting.
Yeah, which is just surprising. But like I said, I think Brahim Diaz has stepped up. Kabi too. He set up Brahim Diaz's goal. He has also been very good this tournament. I think Cameroon will be disappointed to concede from 2 set-piece goals, especially because I think Morocco, that's not their strength. Morocco,
and that's a Cameroon thing actually. Cameroon score from dead balls a lot, so to concede from dead balls would be Yeah.
So, but Morocco themselves, this is the tournament for them because they are hosting it. This is meant, the whole investment in football. Obviously, it's to make football more attractive in the country.
Yeah.
But the pinnacle of that is the Moroccan national team also becoming a winning footballing team. So, for them, they haven't been as dominant in African football. But from being in the FIFA World Cup semi-finals to come into the semi-finals of the AFCON, they want to probably continue that momentum and possibly build on that. And I think that going into the match against Nigeria, they have every chance of doing that.
Stay with that game with me before I move it on, because I want predictions for that game and how you think that will play out, because next week, by the time we're back, I think it will be decided. So who wins that game and why for you?
I think Nigeria go through.
Nigeria go through?
Yeah, as much as they've been the known package, to be fair. But I think that when they've been on the field, they have delivered. And this is even going back to their World Cup qualifying campaign.
Yeah.
The performance against Benin. Obviously, Benin were top of the group at that time. For them to come out and then beat Benin by 4 goals to 1, I think. And then they lost to DR Congo, but that was on penalties. And they were able to go toe-to-toe with a much improved DR Congo team. But just bringing it back to this tournament, I think that Nigeria, as much as off the field, they've had their complications. I think on the field, they've delivered. And in terms of star quality, they have it. You guys were talking about both Morocco and Senegal. I actually think Nigeria
have a lot of star quality, actually.
Maybe with Senegal, it's more spread around. But in terms of the top level of quality, I think Nigeria probably have that. So for me, Nigeria go through against Morocco.
Eugene?
I would also side with him.
Nigeria go through?
First of all, with my heart, I don't want any North African country to win the AFCON. So I would say Nigeria on this side, and then Senegal on the other side. And then also particularly because in the midfield, the Moroccans have lost a few players. Unahi is out injured. Saiz, who was out injured from the beginning. A few of their players are out injured. And we know that around this time, Frank Onyeka is playing absolutely well. He's the beast in the midfield as the lone.
I enjoyed him, Iwobi, and I think Ndidi. The pressing in that Algeria game was crazy on steroids. Algeria didn't know what hit them. I think that's what unsettled the Algerians in that game. Every time they got on the ball, there were about 3 players on them. Every single time. They couldn't pass. Could you progress? I enjoyed his performance.
Exactly. And then the midfielders the Moroccans started with at the beginning of the tournament are beginning to wane in terms of their physicality and their strength. And we know the Nigerians for now, they are now improving and increasing in terms of their tempo in the game. So I believe that Ndidi, Iwobi and Onyeka midfield will outrun the Moroccans. And we know that we saw what Osimhen did to Ben Sebaini. That was Psalm 23 verse 2. He took him into some green pastures and then Ben Sebaini ate some grass. And Ben Sebaini is a good player. He's very good player as well. Yep. And so I think on that day he'll do that as well. And I know Lukman against Mazra will be one to look for. So I think all in all, and I think Akko Adams also have a good day. Yeah. So I think the Moroccans have been lucky. If you watch all the Moroccan games, they were lucky against Mali because there was a penalty call that should have been given to Mali. They were lucky against Tanzania because Tanzania has so many chances. So the Moroccans have been lucky throughout the tournament.
But that aside, though, they've only considered from a penalty, no? I think the only goal has been from a penalty. The only goal they've considered this competition.
Against Mali.
Against Mali.
Zidane had not considered a goal until he made Osimhen and considered 2. So I believe the attacking firepower of the Nigerians will be too much for them. And looking at how Bassi and Shemi Ajayi has been excellent, but he's not getting the plaudits because he's done so very well. And I'm bright to Saïd Samuel as well. And I think I'll be looking forward to see how Saïd Samuel fares against Brahim Diaz in that game because Osayi had that right back slot on lockdown in their last game, and he ended up winning the man of the match. So for me, Nigeria have a dominant performance, and then I think they will
Nigeria to go through
Morocco by 2-0.
If I can add just something to that, I think this is also the first time Morocco have a proper test. I appreciate the fact that, like you said, they haven't conceded a lot of goals, but against Tanzania, against Comoros, Mali gave them a test, but even we talk about how Mali haven't been impressive.
Cameroon wasn't a big test enough.
The Cameroonians,
they go through. They go through the test.
The Cameroonians were using Inshallah in vibes, and in their language they call it Lehemle. So
Cameroon were so bad in that.
That's the point. Because on paper it should be a test, but they weren't actually able to trouble Morocco. So this is actually a time where they're coming against top opposition.
Fair. Let's take our second break here on the show. When we come back, we'll get into Europe. We'll talk about the FA Cup. We'll get into some Bundesliga, some Serie A action. Lots to talk about as far as European football is concerned. So stay with us here on Scorecard. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. Let's get on to Europe now and let's go to the FA Cup round of 32. Manchester City up against Exeter City 10-1 is how it ended. I felt sorry at a point, but it's football. It's what it is. So let's get the highlights of that game. Ghana's Antoine Semenyo, center stage of that action. Let's get it. The day for start padding. Anybody who wanted to get their numbers up, this was the game you needed to do it. Let me take your thoughts on Semenyo, guys. Brilliant debut for the Ghanaian. Dream debut, if you could put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, to get a goal and an assist. I think the first half he had a few good opportunities, but he wasn't able to take it. In the second half, he came out and within 10-15 minutes, he had a goal and an assist. And I think that's exactly what he would have wanted to coming into this new team. Starting against Exeter, though, that's a positive for him. Mm-hmm. But I still think that he probably has to go a bit way to break into the first team. If you ask me, he probably should be playing with Savinho if he can find a way to put Cherki in another midfield position. But I think that's the issue.
Let me tell you something. I don't think it's controversial, but I'll say it anyway. I don't think that on the flanks at Manchester City, there's anybody better than him. Not Savinho, not Oscar Bob, and definitely not Jeremy Doku. Numbers don't lie. You can put the numbers up. You can put the efficiency up. Goals, assists, creativity. Jeremy Doku is busy, but he's not Semenyo. Like, if it comes to putting the ball in the back of the net, he will do it. Jeremy will cross the ball, or he can beat his man. His end product is always suspect. I'm going to say he has certain attributes that are better than Antoine, but Antoine is definitely a more efficient player. I'll just put it.
Oh no, I think that's fair, but it just depends on how Pep retools his midfield. Because if we assume that Rodri is back, Rodri is a constant there. Reinders is definitely going to play. Yeah. And then, how do you call it? I don't know if he goes to Nico Gonzalez or Bernardo or Rico Lewis, but he'll find that if he structures it that way, that means because the thing is, he doesn't trust Ryan Cherki in the middle. Because I don't think defensively, if he wanted Cherki to play as one of the three midfielders, it would help him. So when he moves Cherki out to the right, with Haaland's position guaranteed, it now depends on what does he want from his left winger. From his left winger, does he want someone who's going to play maybe in like the Grealish role that he used to play, where he comes inside and is a bit more creative, and Doku can do that but beat his man. Semenyo is probably different. Maybe if you're trying to stretch the game and you're going to be moving from end to end, Semenyo probably makes more sense because he can get in behind a bit more. But if it's going to be a very stagnant defense, I think there's an argument for playing Doku, because Cherki is going to be creative on the other side, so there's an argument for playing, Doku as the one who, if you can't just, create something, you can at least beat your man. Obviously, for me, Semenyo is also probably the best winger in that team. Bar Cherki's form, given how influential he's been. But I don't even think Cherki should be regarded as a winger. Yeah. So he should fit into that team really well. And like I said, he started really well. He started really well against Exeter City. It's just if he can build on that. For Bournemouth, even though he scored on his final game, he went for a long run without actually scoring. And in the Pep Guardiola team, if you are not producing immediately, obviously there are other things he can contribute in terms of pressing. But if he's not contributing in terms of, numbers-wise, Pep is always going to try and retool and bring someone else. And if someone else works, it doesn't even mean that you're playing back. It just means that you lose your position in the team for a while. It's also how he adjusts to certain things like that. But it's been an incredible move. He started off really well, and I just hope the best for him.
Yeah, Eugene?
Yeah, so I think first off, he gave a good account of himself, and he gave City fans a glimpse of what he would provide for them. But I think I do not agree with you. I think that, I was telling someone that if I were, from the City perspective, it's good to have Semenyo, but if I'm an agent of Semenyo, it's not good to go to City. Because I remember when Mamouche was going to City, I spoke to an Egyptian journalist at the time, and he was telling me that one of the things that made Mamouche who he was the fact that he was the main guy at Frankfurt. He was guaranteed of game time, and so that boosted his confidence. And then he came into this team. Well, he started very well, scored a hat-trick, and then once the injury set in, that's what changed the dynamic. And now with the return of Rodri, and that changed the dynamics, because if Rodri is there, Tijani Reinders will be there. Then if he's saying Cherki shouldn't play 10, means Foden plays 10. If Foden plays 10, Cherki maybe goes to the wing. Then there's Mamouche, there's Doku. too many ifs. But I think the only good thing about Semenyo is he could play in every other position. He could play as a false
right
nine.
wing, false nine.
He could even deputize
Yeah.
for he could replace Haaland, and I think that's one of the things that it will be good for him. And I say, well, the move he did is risky, but I think for him, luckily for him, he's one of the few players who are almost guaranteed a place in the World Cup squad. So this move doesn't really change the dynamic for him.
Yeah.
But I think that from the Ghanaian perspective, I hope he does well, because that boosts the image of the Black Stars heading to the World Cup. Because what does it mean? We have a player in
Pep
Citi.
Guardiola play for Manchester
We have
City.
someone in Spurs. We have a few players around in Europe.
Makes
so
sense.
It boosts the profile of the team. But hopefully he gets his chance, and then he takes his chance and proves himself, because Pep, as usual, he rotates so many players. I saw him do that to Mahrez and Sterling. One of the things I don't like Pep for is he takes a player here, and Pep brings the player here back. He raises you, he puts you here, and when you are at your highest, he will make it a single mission to bring you down. So I think it's too much of a risk, but I just wish him all the best, and I hope that things work out for him. And he'll be in the Champions League as well. That's good for him. I hope he's registered, and then he plays.
You wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Semenyo will be a success. I think he's too talented to not be successful at City. But I think Eugene makes he rehashes a very vital point. Guardiola, because of the influence he has on Man City, he can pick up a player, and if he doesn't fancy you, that's it. It happened with Calvin Phillips. It happened with Jack Grealish, who came in for 100 million. They spent this much. Once Pep realizes, up close, I thought you were good from afar, but up close, I'm not really convinced. He can just either decide to remove you like the way he did with Matthias Nunes, or and I don't think Semenyo, people were talking about Semenyo playing in a different position. I don't think that was going to happen. At United, that was possible. I don't know if that was one of the considerations of Amorim. But at Man City, I think he's guaranteed to be played as a forward line. It's just, I think it's just up to him to show to City and to Pep Guardiola that he's exactly what he thought he was getting, or even better. Because Pep says he thinks he can get better, and I think so too.
He definitely can get better. I would say that, look, you know what, in the end, not in jest, but it's Manchester City. I don't think, like you're saying, he'll play every match. I don't think we should be alarmed if he doesn't play every match. Worst case scenario, the bank is big, the check is fat. No, and to be honest, look, if you ask Semenyo, probably 5-6 years ago, if he thought he'd be playing under Guardiola, I'm sure he'd have called you crazy. And so for him, the hard work is definitely there. I think that when I noticed him first at Bristol City, the one thing that was holding him back was injuries. Like, he was always injured. Could never really build proper rhythm. He would hit good form, 3 goals, 2 assists, injured. Come back, goals, and then injured. Now, he's been able to stay healthy, stay fit for a long time, but look, again, I'm sure he's pinching himself right now. Like, playing under Guardiola, playing for Sergio Aguero's Manchester City, that's crazy. Like, it's big enough already, because if you leave Manchester City now, where do you go? Like, maybe Real Madrid, maybe Barcelona, but those teams are not even bigger than Manchester City in terms of performance now. So I think that for him, look, it's as good as it gets. He should enjoy his moments,
and
get to play all of that. Yeah,
it's different from at Frankfurt, at a Bournemouth, you can be guaranteed playing time. They need you to be the player who gets them out, to be the difference. But I think that a club like Man City, clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona, you can play there and just take your opportunities when they come. It happened with Mahrez, like you were saying. It happened with Bernardo Silva. It happened with so many players. When Sterling was there, even Gabriel Jesus and Aguero. There are times where Aguero was starting instead of Gabriel Jesus. And in a Guardiola team, he'll find a way to make you work. The way he works tactically, there will be a game where he looks at you specifically and how you fit into the team. And then you definitely start. It's just about taking your opportunities where they come. And I think Semenyo is good enough, and it should be, hopefully everything works out well for him.
Well, Semenyo scored quite a number of goals in the Premier League already. Hopefully, he can up his tally with Manchester City. Let's get on to some other action. Charlton Athletic were up against Chelsea. Liam Rosenia, debut for the manager. He also has been talking tough. He says that he's about to do big things at Chelsea. Not bother too much about his CV and all of that. Let's get the highlights of this one. Chelsea won really handsomely in this game. We'll come back and try and unpack that game. A lot for the new manager to smile about. It's Charlton Athletic, but still a lot to smile about. Let me start with you on that one. So Liam Rosenia takes over. He's not fancied by a lot of people. Lots of Chelsea fans are not too convinced by him, but big start to his campaign. We are seeing probably what should be willingness to use some players who have been on the fringes.
I think, yeah, with the level of the opponents, I think it was an opportunity for others who haven't got a lot of game time. But I'm one of those Chelsea fans who really don't fancy him. I used to watch him at Strasbourg, and he was good enough. I think he's made too much of a leap, and he's made the leap Amorim made and other Graham Potter made, and I think he might regret it. I think he should have taken the route of Fabian Hessler, maybe go to a Brighton or a mid-table team, and then over time you try and enter into the top 6 teams. Something like what Marco Silva with Fulham is doing. But I think where Marco Silva has gotten to, he's good enough to enter into one of the top
big teams,
because he has garnered experience for over 5-6 years. But that notwithstanding, because I think that these Chelsea players are, since the Barcelona game, they look like docile lions. They have it in them to do it, but they need someone to whip that thing in them and to sort of just rejuvenate the energy in them. And I honestly, I think where Liam Rosenio is in his career is he's also too early in his career to be given such a group of young players. And so honestly, I'm sitting and looking at him, and I don't know what exactly is his ceiling, where he can take this Chelsea team to. We'll just hope and pray that he gives us a good outing. But when this performance, I don't think it was a 5-star performance. Charlton Athletic actually looked like they were getting to this game, especially when they equalized. I think it's just the goalkeeper and the defense that led them off, but I think they gave a good account of themselves. And it's just a £1 billion pound team that's just superior for them.
Nearly 2 billion now.
Look at that, nearly 2 billion, and you don't know who is the marquee signing and who is very much important in this team. And that's even what kills me.
Quick thoughts on that before we go to our next highlight. Rosinha winning his first game, good debut.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he wanted. It's a dominant win, but I don't think it's against Charlton Athletic. He's not going to get any extra credit for that from the Chelsea fans. I think it's an interesting point Eugene mentions about him going into this club at this stage of his development. Because what you realize now is a lot of these managers, they take the jump, they go to one of these clubs, and then they don't get the time to develop what they want. So the best example I can use for him right now is probably Arteta. He probably hopes that he gets to have a team for the length of time that Arteta is. Because if you remember, when Arteta came, he got rid of all the old players. He got rid of Ozil, he got rid of Aubameyang, and he started with this generation of young players. Yeah. And with the young players, it's much different. Like when they are older players want to see what you want. We are looking to, like, what have you achieved before in this game? Why should I listen to you? With the younger players, all they want to do is to be in the team. So they want to please the manager and hope that, the next game I play. And so he has to hope that while these players are now developing and getting their perception about how football should be, he is able to at least, make best use of that time. But I think in order to get the full benefit of this, it will take a lot of time. Similar to the way Arteta has had a lot of time. And even then, it doesn't guarantee that it ends in trophies. You can probably guarantee yourself to have a competitive team or a young team that is probably ready for big game or has a big game mentality, but doesn't necessarily guarantee you trophy. But like I said, it's a good start for him.
Good start. Let's do some back-to-back highlights, and it's obviously not an FA Cup without an upset. Now, the defending champions have been knocked off their perch by a 6th-tier team. Macclesfield knocking out Crystal Palace. We'll get the highlights, and then we'll do Tottenham Hotspur, Aston Villa, because like I've been saying for the longest time, there's trouble brewing at the white side of North London. Back-to-back highlights. We'll come back in studio and discuss. Back. Let me take quick thoughts on the Palace situation. Palace knocked out. They look to be on a downslide.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been trying to replicate the magic from last season, and they haven't quite done that. Losing Eze and all the drama that happened with Gueye, I think has destabilized their season a lot. And Glasner himself doesn't look like he's willing to commit beyond the end of his contract. So I think a lot of things are coming together. You also factor in the fact that they're now playing in the Conference League and have to play games on Thursday, Sunday. So I think it's just an exhausting.
A lot going on for them.
That's run out. Hopefully this season they can still get silverware at the end of it with the Conference League. But they look like they're just tired at this point.
Quick thoughts on Spurs. Knocked out as well. Yeah,
in their last 9 games, they won just 3 matches. I think that was, one in the Premier League, then against Slavia Praha, and just another one. And I think that's a sackable offence. If he was on the other side of North London, Arsenal, that's a sackable offence. Yep. He was in West London, that's a sackable offence. I think it's just where he is that they will allow that. And I think, looking at the kind of players that Spurs have, I think that's unpardonable. And I think the Spurs board need to look at him again and then fast. But I think the problem will be his replacement. Who replaces him at this time of the season?
Spurs going through coaches fast. Let's finish off with that Spanish Super Cup action. Barcelona against Real Madrid. Barca walking out victors in the end in that one. Let's get the highlights. Barcelona overpowering their bitter rivals Real Madrid 3-2. 10 seconds of thoughts on that game. Time up.
After losing the first Clasico this season, Barca will be happy to win this one after how they dominated Real Madrid last season. The first trophy of the season, and I think it will set a statement for how the rest of the season will go in Spain.
Yeah.
Just for me, Vinicius looked like he's coming back to his best, and hopefully we get a glimpse of his old times. Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't end up in Saudi Arabia or some other place because of contract issues. But thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you guys out there for sending in your thoughts via messages. We appreciate it. Same time next week, Scorecard will come your way.